Welcome to the final podcast of calendar 2023, unless there's an emergency.
There may always be an emergency.
Yeah, we got like what 4 days? 4 or 5 days. There'll be something come up.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, probably. We're going to pick the semifinal games, the two that we have not. We also, we had Bowl Bonanza 1. We had Bowl Bonanza 2. If you didn't listen to those, you can go back. How are our picks doing? Do we know? Anyone keeping track, Sean?
0.
Bowl record so far. Oh, boy.
I'm pretty sure I don't want to know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Ross, 11-8-1.
That's good.
I am 7-12-1, and I'm in second.
That's
Pat
great.
and Sean, 5-14-1.
Woo!
Holy shnikey.
Lighting it up.
Do I get the
nothing.
bowl picks? It's race for the bourbon, right?
You get a
Bowl
drink.
race for the bourbon. Case of
Well,
Blanton's, maybe some Pappy.
No, Pappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take
Don't-
Makers. It's
don't-
fine.
In Houston at the championship game, we will buy you a packet of barbecue sauce. How about that?
Oh,
There you go.
A packet.
wonderful.
We'll talk bowl games, though. I'm enjoying the bowl week, bowl bonanza. Others seem to be just angry that they exist. I am not that person. Pat, welcome back from South America. I'd ask you about your trip, but no one wants to hear about it. It's nothing worse than podcasts where people talk about their vacation. Let's start with the basics that there's still some outstanding news. Florida State, we did have the emergency pod when they were declared they were going to sue. They did sue. They have sued the ACC. How successful this will be? They're very aggressive. I read it. I don't know. Seems like it's still a little bit of an uphill climb. But what do we know about FSU trying to get out of the ACC and in turn detonating the ACC and pretty much leaving a crater in the middle of college athletics? Like this is the big one. This would be the big one. Vesuvius level, perhaps, or something close. Ross, what's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, it could think about it. It could open the door if the judge rules in this case. And the judge, by the way, assigned to the case is a Florida State alum. I know you're shocked to learn that news. And if the judge eventually, if this eventually goes to trial and the judge rules that Florida State is not bound by the grant of rights, then my goodness, it really it opens the door for more schools to challenge their grant of rights and establishes by the court of law, a precedent, right? And I think some things also new that we only learned on Friday is that on Thursday, the ACC proactively filed a declaratory action of their own against Florida State in defense of the grant of rights, knowing that FSU's intentions were. So they in North Carolina filed their own lawsuit. But yeah, the impact of this could be huge and could set a precedent where grants of rights would be, considered non-binding from now on. So that's kind of like the big issue to watch here. This is I think everybody should know this is a long process, right? Like we're probably at least 2 years away from Florida State not competing in the ACC, because this case is probably 8, 10, 12, 15 months of legal arguments and such. And then you got an extra year onto that or so in the notice of exit that Florida State has to give of a year. So everybody should keep that in mind as we march forward with this thing.
Yeah, and admittedly, I was out of the country and out of the hemisphere when this happened, so that was I
Humble
took
brag.
me by
Humble brag.
surprise. No,
We're not talking about your vacation. We're not talking about it.
We're not. I'm just saying I was
I'm
gone.
like Nick Saban. How many times you bring it up? Not gonna answer your question.
I was gone to an extent that it was hard to actually keep up with all the news. However, the thing it seemed to me here is that, FSU used the CFP snub as cover for something it wanted to do all along. And it looked very much like they may do it last August. They had an August 15th deadline to try to get out within a year's time. I think it was determined that that was just not enough time to get together what would be a massive legal argument to try to get out without paying $350 to $500 million. So, but as people I talked to then said, Florida State's going to do this, and they're going to do it before waiting until next summer. They weren't going to run up against close against the deadline again. So the expectation is that it might come in the fall, and then it didn't. And, whether they were really actually satiated by the success initiatives, doubtful. Or whether it just took them a while to get things in order. And then, hey, we just got handed this excuse, more or less, of we didn't make the playoff. Let's go. And now they're trying to go. So I agree with you, Dan, that this does seem like an uphill fight. I haven't completely parsed it, but they're dead set on trying it. And again, as was told to me last August, Clemson, at that time at least, was joined at the hip, basically, with Florida State. If Florida State gets out, Clemson's getting out. Miami would want out. And then we do have the big one. This wouldn't be that fissure in the 2-mile-long fissure in Iceland, which was pretty cool to look at the videos of that. But this would be Vesuvius. This would be Mount St. Helens. This would be all that stuff. This would be a massive, massive shake to college athletics.
We shall see. Well, plenty this offseason, of course, with the legal ramifications of this fight, I think are going to be significant. One more FSU-related issue. They did use the snub as a big rallying cry and maybe impetus. But they were going to do this. They were going to sue the ACC. The ACC was going to sue Florida State. Pretty much had everything. Michigan almost sued the Big Ten, right? Everybody's suing everybody.
A lot of lawsuits
That's why people come to college sports for the lawsuits.
Yeah. USA Today reported that Kansas, in defense of Bill Self and everything during the FBI scandal, spent $10 million in legal fees.
That's a whole year of Bill's contract.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough money. We said $10 million.
Yeah.
Not a criminal case, not a civil case, a regulatory discipline. Like what would matter? I don't know how you describe this. System's broken when it costs $10 million. They had two lawyers sitting in New York courthouse the whole time. I remember that, thinking, "Good God, this is a waste of money." $10 million.
By the way, I was gonna touch one more Florida State, a couple more Florida State things from the full document lawsuit that we got on Friday. That, of course, the school made public immediately with a link on its website to not just the lawsuit, but like a letter to the fans, the 2 ACC grant of rights documents that they have. They made all of it public with links on its website almost immediately on Friday. So very good on the transparency, Seminoles. Yeah. But one thing I want to note is not only did they use in the lawsuit the CFP snub, and it was mentioned in the lawsuit quite a bit, but they used the expansion, the ACC expansion that they voted against back in August. And they really poor SMU took some body blows in this lawsuit. But FSU obviously very much against the expansion to add Cal, Stanford in SMU. And they're using that. Plus they're using, I don't know if this was kind of an interesting part of the lawsuit, was answering the question of why the ACC is stuck in this why they agreed in 2016 to a 20-year agreement with ESPN. And they point to, the creation of the ACC network. ESPN basically offered Florida State offered the ACC an ultimatum: either go 20 years or you basically don't get your ACC network. And you remember that like a year prior, I believe the SEC started their network, and a few years before that, the Big Ten started theirs. So there was some real anxiety in the ACC, and they felt because of the ESPN's ultimatum that they had to do this 20-year deal. And I think a third thing I'll mention, I think this is maybe the biggest part of their argument, or the most likely portion of their argument that you could see a judge ruling in their favor, is ESPN has an option, and this is pretty fascinating. ESPN has a 9-year option to extend the deal 9 years in 2027. So right now, the deal actually only goes to 27. But ESPN, of course, because it's such a beneficial deal for them, right? They would almost certainly extend it 9 years. Well, ESPN doesn't have to make that decision yet. They don't have a deadline to extend that 9-year option. Well, they did have a deadline. I think it was 2021 or 2020. And the ACC commissioner, I believe Jim Phillips at the time, delayed that deadline without the approval, at least if Florida State claims, of its presidents, and without a vote, a 2/3 vote. So that's like one of the things in there. I noticed that maybe one of the only things in there, right, that could really give them some kind of a better edge here or advantage. But the rest of it, it's going to be hard, to see a judge or a court rule in their favor. But there's a couple things there, and those are a few that I noticed through the lawsuit.
That's a good summation of some of the sticking points here that they're going to try to go after. The thing that bothers me is, I keep hearing this is survival. This is we can't survive with this revenue gap. What happened this year with the revenue gap? You went 13-0. You beat 2 SEC schools. The ACC won 4 non-revenue fall sports titles. Somehow, stuff's still getting done in the ACC at a championship level. When Clemson won 2 titles, they weren't making as much money as the SEC schools. They sure weren't making as much money as the Big Ten schools. When Florida State won in 2013, I don't know the numbers, but I would bet probably not making as much. For this to all come down to we have to have all this money. It just has always bothered me. It's going to continue to bother me. And again, Florida State didn't start this arms race, but they're the ones that have taken it to a new level here where, Texas and Oklahoma were near the end of a grant of rights. The Pac-12 schools were very near the end of a grant of rights when they got out. They got 13 years on that thing. And they're saying, well, we can't do this. It's intolerable. First of all, you did sign it. You did agree to it. And secondly, asking to have somebody wave this wand because we can't compete. We can't do it. Hey, Florida State, I think arguably got a bad break this year and should have been in the playoff. You can somewhat understand why they were left out, but it was a bad playoff. We're going to have a better playoff next year. You go 13-0, there ain't no question you're going to get in. You win the ACC championship, you're absolutely getting in. This whole argument, we have no chance, does not make any sense to me looking at what's coming down the road all of next year.
You would get in at 11-2.
Yeah.
You can get in if you win your conference, you don't even have to go undefeated anymore. The boogeyman is always waiting. The sky is always falling.
Always.
They're always wrong, but they'll tell you next time is the existential crisis, and that's what they're doing here. We have to destroy everything, potentially, so that Florida State can still compete when they're already competing. I agree with you. But it never ends, and it works. Fans go for it. Trustees, ADs, coaches say, I don't even know if it's planned. I think they really have the fear.
Yeah. They go for it.
They go for it.
It's amazing. Like, I wrote a column today basically saying Florida State's greedy, just like everyone else in college football. And the people, you don't understand. I was like, no, I'm pretty well do understand. You've been sold this bill of this doomsday scenario that I don't really see as being feasible. Anyway, Go ahead.
Oh, it's true. This is what they do. And they scream it. They're wrong, and they're wrong, and they're wrong, and they're wrong. And it doesn't matter. The next one is always the sky is falling. And usually they lead themselves into bigger and bigger problems or more and more imbalance. We've talked a lot about how the NIL and the portal doesn't mean you have to like every bit of it, but it's clearly spreading talent out. But if you put that out there on social media right now, you'd be told by 1,000 people you're dead wrong and don't believe your lying eyes. I don't know what else to say. It's like, well, we've been telling you it's going to happen. No. So Coach Mack told me it was terrible. We're destroyed. You're like, no, you're not. Clearly not. But it doesn't really matter. I don't know. So it's why I always sit there and say, don't listen to when they come up with a consensus on something, don't buy it. But they got the right to sue and try to get out. We'll see if they do get out. That'll be it. But I mean, the ramifications for the overall bit of the sport over something that one school fears could be a problem is pretty wild.
Yeah,
because if we did everything they do is about what somebody's fears is happening. Like I said, they have humiliated themselves in front of Congress. They spent millions of dollars lobbying, time, effort. I mean, at some point, even the politicians are going to wake up and go, wait, all the stuff you told us in our office didn't turn out to be true. And they're going to be like, yeah, but next time. It's just the way it works. And you go, geez, I don't know. I don't know what really to tell you. We look at the transfer portal next year. You look at it, championship contenders at places. You're Ole Miss, Missouri, some of these schools not in the mix before. They're in it now. They're in it big time ways.
And I will say, poor little old Florida State, which didn't have all the money. They got Keon Coleman, they got Johnny Wilson, they got Jared Verse. I mean, they got studs out of the portal.
Yeah.
None of them seem to be playing in the bowl game.
None of them will be playing in the bowl game.
The Orange Bowl is something. The Orange Bowl is probably a good one that people are going to point to, right? To say, why do we have bowls? But because it's going to be mostly backups. And look, when the playoff expansion arrives, it's going to be worse. Like that's good. That's how it's going to be. Like bowl games are going to turn into like prepping your backups and secondary players, giving them a little dose of reality before they are starters next year. And that's what it's going to turn into. And maybe that's fine.
Yeah, it'll be the spring game before the spring game.
Yeah,
it's just
for schools. It's probably good. A lot of coaches will probably like that.
I don't think they'd mind.
Bowls won't. Bowls won't.
I'll get to the Coach Prime's comments on FSU in a minute. Remind me to do it. But I have enjoyed the bowls.
Yeah.
And I know all the again, unpopular opinion. You're supposed to say these are meaningless. There's nobody watching. Yes, the Georgia-Florida State game could have been this epic game. Instead, nobody's playing. I don't blame the Florida State kids. The playoff committee literally told them all 13 games they played this year were worthless.
Right.
We shouldn't have a team like that. Shouldn't have to. I don't blame any of these guys for skipping out. The coaches skip out. Everyone skips out. But once they play the game, for the most part, the teams have been playing, and you watch the enthusiasm, and you watch younger players make plays, and everyone's fired up. And the Bulls have embraced like their campiness. They stopped being too serious.
And that's fun to see. That's been fun to see. Like the Pop-Tarts, like a trophy with slots at the top of it for actual Pop-Tarts to be inserted into. Like that needs to happen more because the bowl games are going to turn into, like Pat said, I think that's a great summation, is they're going to be the spring game before the spring game.
Yeah.
And they should have fun with that. And they should be campy and do that stuff because they don't need to take it too seriously because the players aren't taking it too seriously.
I mean, like it's not winning. It's something, but you're winning something, but it's not what it used to be. It's different. But I watched UNLV and Kansas on Tuesday night. It was a really fun game.
Yeah.
It was about 1,000 penalties, but those are penalties. But it was pointed out in the broadcast, like Kansas hadn't played in over a month. Like sometimes your timing's off, all that. It was a good game. UNLV was played hard. Like it was fun. All the different stuff, the Pop-Tart Bowl trophy, the Military Bowl had a mudslide going at the stadium. Texas State and Rice drank the stadium empty of beer, SMU Stadium.
Yeah, that was impressive. I mean, I'm sure they didn't have full concourses going with concessions, but still, that's good work, Texas State. It's your first ever bowl game.
The San Marcos, those people from San Marcos, they know how to party. Lord.
Not messing around, and they didn't mess around at whatever bowl that was. And like you said, like Tennessee is in the Citrus Bowl. They're gonna start Nico.
Nico, yeah.
I'm gonna learn how to say his name for next season. I'm sorry. I used to know. I learned it for a little while, then I forgot.
Iamaleava, I believe.
There you go. Their stud
also
quarterback.
Wrong, but
the $8 million man.
There's Ohio State's Devin Brown. What's he look like? He's going to be the quarterback. It's just different. It's different. But I've enjoyed the bowls. You don't have to watch. You don't have to watch. Many of the games are during hours. You should be finding something better to do. I have nothing better to do. But
I mean, I would watch a mid-afternoon weekday football game between JV high schools if it was broadcast, probably. So I get that. I enjoy that little diversion.
Yeah, I've liked it. So, but these are what your bowls are going to be. I don't know how the hell you bet them, and that's why I have 5 wins. And the second one, I went smarter. I took all underdogs pretty much. My bowl bonanza too. All right, here's the line from Coach Prime, because it's got to be fun. About FSU getting snubbed. Coach Norvell coaches butt off. We can't take nothing away from him. He was on a ESPN or something. But the real question you have is, would you leave me out of the college playoffs? So basically, if Colorado had gone 13-0, or if Deion had been coaching Florida State.
There you go.
Ain't no way in the world where box office. You got to see this unless you're crazy. I wish I had the problems that Coach Norvell has. Now, we'll point out a couple things. One, you won 4 games, not 13.
Yeah, you're only 8 off the total. Darn those 8 games, almost.
Well, if I had done it,
Deion missed the friggin' Las Vegas Bowl by 2 games. So
I will say, had you got to 6, all the bowls would have been trying to get you. I do believe that. But you won 4 games. You won 4. So, but Coach Prime, is he right though? Would they have dared to keep FSU out if Deion Sanders was coaching the Seminoles?
That's a fascinating what if. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And I do believe he brought that up for a reason, because he was interested in the job when they gave it to Norvell, and he wasn't getting any traction there. And yes, he did play there, and I'm sure that factored into him bringing that up. But I mean, it would have been, that's one of those times where you'd absolutely love to have a mic in the committee room to hear what's the discussion of Deion Sanders. I mean, you look at the TV ratings, Colorado was all over the top 20 for the season in games, most watched games for Colorado. Come on now. So that tells me that he is box office. So you got to get the winning part down, Coach Prime. But if you do that, people will fight to get you in their games.
You know, if that is, it is a fascinating question, because they, even though, I mean, Florida State's team this year drew certainly a good amount of eyeballs, and I think led the ACC in multiple viewership categories, which the school tweeted out several times to make sure everybody knew that. But it is fascinating because they would have gotten even more eyeballs with Deion, and not only that, think about late in the season when it was a question whether an undefeated Florida State would make it. Think about what kind of campaign that Deion in the school would have raised over the last few weeks. I mean, it would be to the point where committee members maybe have been swayed by a campaign, because he was almost certainly, you guys remember Norvell after the ACC championship game didn't really do much campaigning. He said, I think his response was something like, there is no question. There's no question in us getting in or not getting in. I mean, Deion would have went off for 10 minutes about that. And he may have done commercials leading up to that week about it. I mean, who knows? Like, it would have been pretty crazy. And I wonder if it would have swayed committee members. I mean, we know that it was pretty close. Boo Corrigan, I think, said publicly that they took the vote, 6, 7, 8 times. They went through it and then went through it again the next morning. So clearly it was close. So Deion and his campaigning and just who he is and what he carries and the eyeballs he brings. I mean, yeah, you got to kind of wonder if they would have done that, reverse course.
I could see some text messages being received from ESPN execs if you're on that committee. Be
Gets
great
protocol.
to see Coach Prime in there. Yep.
Gets protocol, Pat. We're told they don't think of anything but third down efficiency rates.
That's
game control.
Yeah. What's your stop
he
rate?
would have lobbied and lobbying hell. I remember one of the original BCS fights, or one of the big BCS fights, was between Michigan getting a rematch with Ohio State and Florida jumping in there back in, was it 05? 06?
06.
06.
Yes. Yep.
And Lloyd Carr, of course, taking the high road, saying it would be kind of unseemly. We're not going to politic, we are who we are. And Urban Meyer being at Florida, and there is no high road with Urban. There's just the bulldozer. And he was everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Now, he was right. They got in the game and beat the Buckeyes down. But yeah, and I remember being like, this is old school and new school right here. Lloyd Carr's like, we wouldn't do such a thing. They'll choose. Our young men have shown what their Urban's like. You'd be crazy to pick those guys. We'll be back right after this message. Coach Prime did not win the portal. This is going to be a good transition. We're going to transition to portal discussion. I'm just letting you know how good I'm doing right now.
From Prime to portal.
To portal. They did come in third so far. Rivals portal rankings, third. Now, his big news is he did end up getting Jordan Seaton, the 5-star offensive lineman, did sign with the Buffs. But they came in third. But number one was Ole Miss. We alluded to it earlier. Ole Miss is number one in the portal rankings. The portal king, Lane Kiffin. And this time it was not like 7 QBs. And the big prize is Walter Nolan, the former number one recruit a couple years ago, Texas A&M, defensive lineman transferring in. He's also picked up defensive lineman from Florida and Tennessee, a linebacker from Arkansas, defensive back from Oklahoma, wide receiver from South Carolina, among a bunch of other guys. Lane is loaded up on D and wins the transfer so far. The early transfer. I guess people are still jumping in the transfer portal, but he's got a lead. Early thoughts on the Rebels for next year and what he's done here, Pat?
Intriguing for sure. They obviously had to upgrade the defense immediately because it was really bad this year. And otherwise, I mean, they were a good program. So, you go get Walter Nolan. That's a very big name. He was pretty productive this last year. 8.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for a guy who's 290. He's not like an edge rusher who's just flashing around, flying around. That's pretty good. Now, I will say he had 1 tackle for loss in the last 6 games of the year. That was it. And that was against Abilene Christian. So his production kind of tailed off. He hadn't fully lived up to the billing of being the number one player in his class. So TBD still on whether Walter Nolan is going to turn into a monster superstar at Ole Miss, but with the state of that defense, still a very good pickup for him. And I think it's good to see Lane, try to build a well-rounded team, because I think in the past he's been pretty preoccupied with offense and just said, we'll figure it out on defense, and that only gets you so far.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what how far Ole Miss has come with the portal stuff. Remember, 2 years ago, I think I've said it on the show before, but they had like 3 different kind of collectives, or 3 different separate collectives, and they were kind of all over the place. Lane was fairly frustrated. I remember meeting with him a couple of years ago, and he was really frustrated. And he kind of brought everybody together, and they consolidated the collectives, and they are in the game. I found that interesting at the Peach Bowl press conference. Lane was talking about the football calendar, which we talk about here quite a bit, about the clogged December, where you have the transfer portal opening, and then you have coaches leaving and going. You have playoff games, prep for bowls, and then you have all this transfer action. Lane said, "It's a terrible system. I wouldn't think any other professional sports have ever set up a system where free agency starts while the season is still going. So it really makes no sense. You can leave, you can stay, you can go other places. Coaches can call you when our season is still going. It would be like before the NFC or AFC playoffs start in a couple of weeks. All of a sudden, hey, free agency the week before those games open. So you can start recruiting other people's players and fly them on trips and get them to transfer. So really, it's a really bad system." But he's excelling in the system.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Can't disagree with him on any of that, but yeah, you know what? Use it as it is.
Lane's made a lot out of bad mistakes in the past, bad ideas.
Yeah.
Lane kind of thrives in making the most out of a bad idea. Anyway, we'll have plenty of time to talk Ole Miss, but they're cruising along now. The transfer portal, there's a Friday news dump there. Ross, what's the latest? If he thinks it was free agency before, wait till he sees it's coming. We're heading to annual free agency, right?
Yeah, we talked quite a bit, I think, on the last show and maybe the one before that about this lawsuit that attacks the NCAA's transfer policy and wants to end it, basically, in how through the spring, basically through this academic year, multi-time transfers can play immediately without a waiver. Well, the NCAA made a clarification. At first, it was thought that this just impacts winter and spring sports through the end of this academic year. But no, the NCAA, we reported this on Friday, late afternoon, early evening. The NCAA on Thursday night clarified to schools in a memo that this also impacts current football players. So any multi-time transferring football player who enters the portal this fall, which the portal closes January 2nd. So if you enter the portal this fall, you can be eligible to play at your new school immediately next fall without a waiver, even if you are a multi-time transfer. So there was, as you might imagine, quite an uptick in portal entrance. A lot of second, third, and fourth time transfers have entered the portal over the last few days because of this. So that was a big clarification. It was quite a mess. There were a couple of conferences that got clarification of it on Friday after the memo was sent Thursday night. And again, under the clarification, football players transferring a second time or more and enter the current fall portal can play immediately next fall. In addition to that, because when we got the memo, we also got a letter from the D1 board of directors that went out to some schools. In that kind of laid out the changes that the board of directors and the D1 council are considering this spring, changes to the transfer policy. A lot of it in because of the lawsuit, and a few key changes here. One, it's abolishing the year in residency, right? So it's abolishing the sitting out a year. Number two would be increasing the academic requirements for transfers from 6 hours to 9 hours. And then there's also a consideration for financial penalties against the school if the school doesn't meet a certain academic benchmark. So basically, college athletics is gearing its transfer policy more toward academics and academic-related penalties, so to speak, instead of the year in residency penalty, which is under an attack by the courts and will almost certainly lose that. The NCAA will almost certainly lose that. So in response, they're considering some of these changes, which will probably be brought up next month at the NCAA convention, and then potentially passed in April, according to that letter.
So, yeah, 4 years, 4 schools, 5 years, 5 schools. I think it's coming, don't you? I mean, they're clearing the way. This was quite a little news dump from the NCAA. Thursday night, December 21st, and then word leaks out due to diligent reporters such as yourself, Ross, on Friday, December 22nd. Oh, by the way, football players, go for it. You're free to go next year, wherever. If the academic strictures to this are actually used, enforced, then good, because I do think that this is going to be a difficult thing for players to academically progress towards degrees. And for now, there is still an academic component to college athletics. We'll see how long it lasts, but there is. And so if you increase 6 to 9, that's good. That should be presumably then getting them further down the road toward a degree of some kind. If there are financial penalties that are significant for not having players that pass that number of classes, get that number of hours and credits, then good. But we've seen in the past, the NCAA comes up with ideas and then fails to enforce them over and 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 over. And that's why we're here with the waiver situation.
Yeah, I know. Anytime they're trying to, enforcement's their issue. I think it's just going to happen. I don't love it, but coaches can move every year. I don't know. Or maybe there's a way you set up contracts 3 years or 2 years. You make agreements with schools or collectives that you have to be there more than 1 year. I don't know. Maybe there's ways around it. Every year is kind of tough. Again, when do you do all this? But it's coming that way. It's coming that way. They open the box, and I don't see how they're getting it closed again.
Yeah, I don't love it at all either, but I think at this point they are retreating rapidly.
Yeah. All right. So we got 2 semifinal games. Oh, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's a weird sport. You wait a month. In case you didn't know. I'm like waiting a month to stage your playoff. It's odd.
Yeah.
Let's come back in a month. We'll talk to you then.
Mm-hmm. Always thought that. Like, it's just bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, maybe 1 week. I don't know because it's football. But yeah, it is bizarre. It is a bizarre sport. And here we are. So a month later, we try to rekindle all the excitement. Remember who the hell played on these teams and all of that. But let's make our race for the case picks here. And let's broadly, I guess, just discuss this game. We'll make the picks at the end. Pat, your thoughts on the Rose Bowl? Alabama, Michigan, monster historical teams. One of them more famous for actually winning national titles, particularly lately. Michigan claims a bunch, but whatever. Yeah. Michigan's won the most games. Does Alabama have the most titles? I don't even know.
Yeah, yes and yes. Although, yes, Alabama claims everything that's ever been remotely handled to them.
I don't believe
any. Michigan was like beating people 107-0 under Fielding Yost back in the early 1900s. So they have those titles if they can.
I don't buy any until at least integration, and then even then, I don't know. And these titles are a lot harder to win. Look at when Michigan won its share of a title in '97. Mm-hmm. It had to go play Washington State in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Now it's going to get Alabama and maybe Texas or something. Like it's not the same. It's a lot harder now. But anyway, here we are. Alabama, Michigan. It's going to be a monster. It's going to be a huge TV number. It's going to be an exciting game. Your overall thoughts on this? Let's just do it that way.
Yeah, in terms of trappings, oh my God. It's complete overload. As you said, 1 versus 2 all time. huge fan bases, huge stadiums, huge arrogance, all of it. And it's in the Rose Bowl. So add that to the deal. Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion. Jim Harbaugh, the most discussed coach, cussed and discussed this season by far. Two very compelling personalities there in different ways. Tons of great players on both sides. Cannot wait for it to happen. I might be being a little stubborn here, but I know what Alabama did against Georgia. I also know what Georgia did to itself against Alabama. I saw Alabama get lucky as almighty to beat Auburn. I just don't think this Alabama team is on the level of the Alabama teams that have won national championships. And I think this is the best Michigan team that Harbaugh has had. And I think J.J. McCarthy can make enough plays because they're probably going to have difficulty running the ball. I'm going to take the Wolverines there.
I think the better team is somewhat clearly Michigan. And I think they've been the best and most dominant team, for most of the year in college football. And when you look at, and I thought going into the SEC championship game, I thought, the same, right? Like Georgia was the better team and had been the most dominant or one of the most dominant in college football. And look what happened, right? So never discount Nick Saban in these big games, especially when he has a month to prepare. And I just think that this is going to be a perfect matchup in a lot of ways for a Nick Saban team. There's no crazy mobile quarterback, that on the other side, you've got a team that prides itself on running the ball and playing great defense. I think that Alabama squeaks out the win here and Nick Saban does it again. But I expect a really, really good game. I think the spread is on the money. Michigan at 1.5. And I think
Pat, we were supposed to do the picks later, but you didn't listen.
Pat throws grenades into everything.
Michigan is
ready to
giving
get to
1.5.
man.
We're just supposed to generally discuss the game, but that's all right.
Who cares?
Michigan giving 1.5, which is a lot.
And there's only so much listening to you I can do.
It's can we talk about my vacation? No, we're not
talking. And then the over-under is 44.5, which tells you what kind of game, right, this is going to be. I could totally see, even in overtime, a 23-20 Alabama win. I could see it, and I could see Nick Saban doing it again and ushering Jim Harbaugh into the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sean, go ahead. We're just going with the picks now.
I've trampled the rundown.
The well-planned show.
I was excited to hear about Pat's vacation. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm ready to put aside the madness that took place in that Iron Bowl and get past it and just chalk it up to crazy rivalry game. I'm more focused on what Alabama throws at J.J. McCarthy. At times this year, even if it was a good strategy, the Michigan offense took him out of the game. Even if it's a good strategy, that's not a good look for your starting quarterback, especially going against an Alabama team. I think they're going to come after him, and I think that Saban's going to get to him. So I think Alabama takes this one against Michigan.
Yeah, so the pass rush, right, Dallas Turner and all, it's going to be huge. The ability to cover on the outside by Alabama's cornerbacks. Roman Wilson's kind of the only real breakaway threat Michigan has shown. I think that's going to be advantage Alabama. How does the Michigan line hold up after some injuries? All of that, I think, is going to be a big deal. Defensively, I think Michigan will be very good. This is going to be a very hard-fought game, very, very close. In terms of the pick, my basic philosophy is you don't pick against. Rule 1 on this pod is don't pick against Nick Saban in Alabama. You give him a month. He's an underdog. I mean, that 1.5 isn't bad. I thought it would get to even. So Michigan wins by 1, but I think this would be a really, really strong football game. It will go into the fourth quarter, and I'll take Alabama to win with that 1.5 or at least cover. But I don't know. Could Jalen Milroe? Can Michigan stop that? Harbaugh apparently is not. It's a different strategy going into this bowl. They've struggled in bowl games. They're not doing 15 days of practice, a bunch of Oklahoma drills, beating the living crap out of each other. Apparently, they're easing into it a little better.
Did they do that before? 15 days of Oklahoma drills?
No, but they've said they took the pedal off the. I'm joking about the Oklahoma drills, but yes, they're going to be fresher. That's the theory this year. McCarthy blew the game last year. I mean, amongst other people, but he was not. He blew that game. 2 pick sixes and an end zone fumble, a fumble at the goal line.
Yeah.
Where they could have gone in. They also got a bad call. I mean, I thought that was a touchdown on the long pass, but whatever. I just out of principle, I can't pick against Nick Saban. But that's my pick. But
I'm Lone Wolverine. Is that what it is?
Lone Wolverine, I guess. What would this mean to Harbaugh to win? Saban, it's just another title. And and he has done a good job this year, but it's a little bit over the top at you kind of screwed it up early. You guys always should have been good.
Yeah.
And it's your own fault if you didn't have a quarterback. You're Alabama.
Yep.
But for it'd be nice for Saban, but for Harbaugh, this is a much, much bigger game. For his legacy, for his future, whatever that is. For all of the accusations against the program, for everything. To me, Jim Harbaugh is the star of this playoff right now. He's the biggest name and the biggest touchstone and the firebrand going into this thing. Thoughts on Jim H there, Pat?
Yeah, without question. He's the storyline, I would say. Michigan is the storyline, swimming its way through multiple controversies, NCAA investigations. Harbaugh's been suspended half the season, and now he's matching wits with the greatest of them all. And, I mean, he's done everything in his career except win a championship, right? NFL, played in a Super Bowl against his brother and lost. Has made the college football playoff a couple times and lost. Turned Stanford into a heavyweight, but couldn't, take it any further. So
2 other NFC conference championship losses for the Niners. Yeah.
Yeah. This would be the validation. And then I absolutely think he would feel all the more freedom to skedaddle to the NFL. I think he really would love to finish the job of winning a national title at his alma mater. But then I think he's also realistic enough to say, you know what? They could absolutely hammer me next year. I'm out. And I still don't believe the NFL is going to stand on some principle and say, well, he's under investigation, so we're not interested. No. That dude's proven he can coach in the NFL. He would get a job. So this is the defining moment, I think, of Jim Harbaugh's career. I'm going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, you guys discussed it a little bit, but you go back and look at his records and how close he's been to greatness, even going back to his days at San Diego, right?
Oh,
I mean, and he had 2 11-1 seasons at San Diego.
Non-scholarship. Yeah, non-scholarship.
Yeah, where they won the conference. Stanford, 12-1 his last year at Stanford. They finished number 4, and we're right there, right? And then you look at, 3 of his first 4 years at Michigan, he won 10 games. And then the last 3 years, you see what's happened. And then you guys mentioned the NFL slate. He's come so close. He's put together these great teams, and he just hasn't won it all. And for sure, it's all. I feel like this game is all about him, and about his future and about his legacy. Because if this is it, no matter what, which many people think this is it, man, to go out losing to the SEC in Nick Saban in the Rose Bowl, yikes! That's a tough one. So it is. I feel like I think Dan has said this in the past. Like the playoffs are all about kind of the key characters, and he's like the biggest, right? He's the protagonist here, you could say, in this movie of the playoffs. And the antagonist in a lot of ways is across the sideline.
Yeah, former Michigan State coach too.
Yep.
I don't know if Saban even remembers
Dripping
that.
with drama.
Dripping with drama.
Good thing Pat and I are in New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be obviously huge. And I think the loss last year to TCU plays a role in this, because if he had won at least that playoff game, and say he won a playoff game.
Yeah.
And I think it played a role in him returning. He could have been the Bronco coach. And he did not become the Bronco coach. And he thought, look, I'm bringing back JJ McCarthy. I've got these guys lined up. We can go win. Season, obviously, the wins and losses turned out how he was expecting. Everything else did not. But
what happened, Dan? Did something happen this season with that?
Well, and last January, he was dealing with the level 2 stuff.
The COVID, the dead period recruiting.
Right, which got the NCAA fired up and got him one suspension, and then got them really fired up so that when they heard about the advanced scouting, they come in card chart. Like he creates all his own problems.
Yep.
All he had to do was say, yeah, I did it. And, would have been over probably. And a lot of this stuff would be, I don't know if the Connor Stallions would have been as big.
I don't think it would have.
I don't think the NCAA would have gone that aggressively on it. But I don't know. It's hard to say. But the interesting thing with Michigan is he returned. And I remember writing a lot at the time. It's funny. I wrote a column he brought when he was at the Niners when he coached that University of San Diego team, non-scholarship, like a bunch of kids in San Diego playing football and like hanging out in Pacific Beach and stuff, picking up girls, surfing and stuff. And like I talked to a bunch of players on that team, and they just talk about like, so we're all of a sudden we hear Jim Harbaugh as our coach. We're like, what? And then all of a sudden he comes in and just starts beating the living hell out of all of us. Like, right. Like, yo, bro, like San Diego football here, man. This is not the Chicago Bears.
NFL training camp.
Chicago Bears. Yeah, exactly. So, but he returned to Michigan. They were so far down, they needed him. And I always use the term, he settled family business. Like he got them back to being good. He reversed the rivalry with Michigan State, which was driving Michigan fans crazy. They're losing all these games to Michigan State, let alone Ohio State. He now has won 3 straight against Ohio State. He throws his little darts in there here and there. The third base is something that they just love and will cause Ryan Day years to like have to prove himself. Like he's done everything. It was about settling family business. And at Michigan, they don't sit there and go, we need to win a national title, because they never win the national title.
Mm-hmm.
Harbaugh didn't win a national title. They won, they split a national title in 97. And that's great. And maybe they would have beat Nebraska, or maybe they would have won but it's not the same era of football. It's different. I mean, they had Charles Woodson. They were good. I'm not kidding I'm not taking anything away from that Michigan team, but it was different. It was more like, well, we all share a title. It's just different. So the idea that it's like, we have to win it. Like you take over Alabama, you got to win national title. You take over LSU, you got to win national title. He's done everything he was supposed to do at Michigan. Can he win it now under these circumstances? Is Michigan built that way to do it? I don't know. But if he can do that, he's really probably the greatest coach they've ever had. He pulls that off.
No. It's the final piece, man.
Yeah. And so there's just so much on Jim Harbaugh laying there. And then, his future. Does he leave? Does he stay? Does it meet? I mean, I've talked to a number of people this week about Harbaugh who know Harbaugh well and are talking to Harbaugh. Nobody's got a clue what he's going to do. because he could wake up tomorrow and sign a contract, or he might not. Or I mean, it's just he's Jim. That's the number one thing. He's Jim. Yeah. Good point.
One of the most unpredictable people in the sport.
Yeah, totally good. All right, Texas, Washington, Sugar Bowl. Before we make the picks, general thoughts about the game, Pat. General thoughts.
There, you said that nice and slow. I think I got it.
Steve Sarkisian playing his former team. The Pac-12 makes that kind of stuff. Give me some.
Okay, some storylines.
Yeah, narratives, baby. Nobody's listening for our picks. I read them at the beginning.
I think it's a great game. I really do. I think this is going to be an outstanding game. I think both teams are very good. They've proved it all year. But a sign of where things are going, one's going to be in the SEC and the other's going to be in the Big Ten next year, right? I mean, that's the unavoidable consolidation as we go forward. But, Kalen DeBoer, what he's done is one of the most impressive coaching jobs I've seen in a long time. Washington was not without talent when he took over, but they were in disarray. They couldn't put things together. They needed a quarterback. What did he do? He went and got Michael Penix and revamped his career, and their receivers are phenomenal, and they are fun as hell to watch. So I think they have a lot of appeal. If you want to turn on a game and see a fun team to play, watch Washington. Texas, big-ass brand. Trying to complete the Texas is back narrative. Very close to I say they are back. I say if you make the playoff in a 14 playoff, you're back. But yeah, Sark, look, that was a questionable hire at the time it was made. Credit to Chris Del Conte for seeing it, for maybe getting the advice, the counsel from Nick Saban, whatever it was that convinced him that Steve Sarkisian, who had been a pretty good coach, but never a really good or great coach at Washington and at USC, had progressed enough personally and from coaching acumen at Alabama to take over a humongous program and a huge job and do what several people had not done since 2005. 2009, really, was the last time Texas mattered. So just very, very impressed with what Sark has done. He's recruited like crazy. He's a really good schemer, and he's put together a good staff. And so he's really assembled it to make Texas back for the long haul. And this has just been a huge momentum play for them heading into the SEC next year.
Pat laid it out there pretty well. I mean, it's this looks like it's going to be the exact opposite kind of game as the Rose Bowl game. That one, you could see a pretty low scoring defensive, like grudge match type of game. And this one feels like 42-38, lots of points, lots of touchdowns. If you look at the stats wise, Texas has a much better rushing attack and has a much better defense statistically. And those two things go a long way in the postseason. You hear the defense wins championships a lot, and I think there is something to that. But, man, Michael Penix can really at times just change a game. I think Pat and I saw it in front of our eyes against Oregon the first go around. In just a drop of a hat, the guy can score. And I've said this before on the pod. I don't think any team has been that way Alabama has had a couple teams over the last few years that have been like that. But the LSU 2019 just sticks out to me as far as the deep threat when it comes to Michael Penix and his receivers. So, man, this one just looks like a fun one. And will the better defense and better running game win the champion? Win, or will it be what we've seen from college football the last decade, right? And that is air it out, go long. I'm excited to be in New Orleans at this one and watch it unfold.
Much like the other game, I look at this as a Steve Sarkisian game here. I think it's Kalen DeBoer because it's a pretty interesting backstory too. But Sark's 49, and I swear he's lived like 3 football coaching lives.
Yeah. Yes.
the hot shot part of the USC machine, gets the Washington job, much fanfare, expectation, 34-29, never really gets him going, but leaves for USC, gets the job back when that opens. That bombs out. He's got, some personal issues, some different things he had to overcome there. He gets recycled through the Nick Saban bit. People are wondering whether, where do you take him? He gets the Texas opportunity and, 5-7, 8-5, and then boom, here we are. And it's like so much was always expected of him. I remember a long time ago hearing about this guy is a great football coach and this and that, and it's never materialized until potentially right now. I don't think any of us thought they'd get this good this quick, but they've got the talent, they've got recruiting rolling, and all of those things. Kalen DeBoer, totally different route there. Just building your way up. And let me look at this.
Beating the bushes, man. Sioux Falls, NAIA,
Sioux Falls. Then he goes to. He left Sioux Falls to become a Southern Illinois offensive coordinator. Yeah. Then he's at Eastern Michigan. Then he's at Fresno. Then he's at Indiana. Then he gets the Fresno head job. And, after the COVID year, 9-3, and then he takes Washington. It's like a rocket ship. He solved all the problems with the Huskies. 103-11 as a head coach.
How about that?
67-3 at Sioux Falls. But, hey, you try winning the Great Plains Athletic Conference. Ain't no easy road trips on the Great Plains Athletic Conference. So,
no, you're bussing around the Dakotas, man.
Just two different grinds there. Very, very interesting thing. And both 49 and I think set up to become kind of that next wave of big name coaches.
Mm-hmm.
This may not be their last go around on it. So pretty interesting. All right, should we pick it?
Mm-hmm.
Let's pick it.
All right, pick it now. Ross, you go first.
Texas is back. I think they beat Washington.
Giving 4.
Yep,
giving 4, 63.5. As you said earlier, I should have set it up. The 63.5, it was 44.5 for Alabama, Michigan.
Yeah.
This was 63. Also, game's at 8:45 out of New Orleans, but it could easily be pushed back.
Let's not hope
it's a late one.
that
why
push
don't
it back
even bring
game.
Because of the sunset, boys. We can't start a game at 4.
Yeah.
We can't start the Rose Bowl at 4 or 3, which would make perfect sense because the sun has to set at the beginning of the fourth quarter, not at the beginning of the third quarter.
Yeah.
Get it right.
All those Alabama fans and the SEC contingent going up over there are so excited to see the sunset. Let me tell you, they are pumped.
The sunset's great, but why does it have to be at that moment?
Yeah.
That's why you're going to be watching a football game at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Can we have
sunset
Monday
night?
We're going to be
have to go back to work. Yeah.
We're going to be filing stories at 3 in the morning.
2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sorry for myself.
Rose Bowl sucks, man.
Yeah. Anyway,
pick the game.
Texas. I think Texas covers the 4. They win and they go play Alabama, at least in my picks, Alabama for the national championship in a rematch. I think in the end, it's the running game in the better defense. That's what I'm going with. But I'm not completely confident in that pick because Michael Penix is on the other sideline. So,
yep, I'm riding the Penix wave. This is a team that finds ways to win. They have gone undefeated in the deepest conference in the land. They have found ways to run when they had to run. They found ways to get stops when they had to get stops. And then they have the best receiving core in the country, and they have got a quarterback who can make magic. Remember, they were supposed to get not just beaten, but housed by Oregon in the rematch. Guess what happened? I think they led the whole way or came close to leading the whole way and won that game. So I am not betting against the 13-0 Huskies. I'm taking them and the points, and we will roll on to play Michigan in the championship game.
I think all the sunset talk lets me know that when I'm watching the sunrise after this game, it's going to be a Texas hue for the win of the Longhorns. I
Poetic.
think Washington covers.
Burnt orange.
They are just a team of a bit of destiny this year. They've had some miraculous wins. Unfortunately, I see it's coming to a close against Texas, but Texas wins.
Texas can get a pass rush on Penix, then they're going to win this game. But he's not really mobile. He can move around the pocket and stuff like that, but he's not a running quarterback. They've got that vicious defensive line. They've just got to overwhelm Washington. But I'm still taking Michael Penix Jr. He's so accurate.
Washington tied for the fourth fewest number of sacks allowed.
They have a very good offensive line, but that's a Pac-12 lineup.
Yep.
I don't know they saw anything like what the Longhorns are coming at them with.
Maybe not.
I am taking Washington, though. I am not giving Pat lone Huskies on this. He's so good. They're so innovative. You give them a month. And, look, Texas has been very good, and they did defeat Alabama at Alabama early in the year. But there's been some, it's not like this has been some perfect season. They almost lost to Houston. They lost to Oklahoma. K-State went to OT. It's TCU was close. Like they're good, but it's not like this has just been a juggernaut of just overwhelming everybody. So I am gonna take Washington that one. All right, that's it. That's our race. 2 games. Can't pick another. We picked everything else after the game. So we will broadcast. We will tape a pod after the Sugar Bowl at some point in the middle of the night, and it will be up and ready for you on January 2nd. As early as Sean can get it out. That sunset's really screwing us. Feel for Sean, as he said. I'll be seeing the sunrise.
That's true.
Yep. But
do we have time to get the Texas Tech quick shooter in, or is that
let's do that the next.
Okay.
I mean, we're already
we've gone along.
Yeah, we're long. We're about hour 5 right now. Let's do that. All right. We thank you for listening. Appreciate you listening all of 2023. Massive growth in all of our downloads across the year. And we thank you for that. So we will, unless there's an emergency, we will talk to you in 2024. That's going to be a fun show. So make sure you subscribe and get ready for it. We will talk to you later.